curious. I'm going to ask you questions about healthcare, and then probably specifically how you deal with changing habits, because I think a lot of people with health problems have a lot of trouble with changing habits. So the first question is, if you don't have an answer to this, I have another way to ask it, but I think it's kind of interesting how people answer this question. So what gets you excited about healthcare?
Interesting. As far as getting excited about healthcare, I mean, healthcare is one of those subjects that you don't really give much, I've never given much thought to until you need it, right? So the only time that I really ever thought about healthcare was when I was switching jobs around the same time that my wife was scheduled to have a baby. And I was really concerned that that was going to impact it, whether the move, even though there was going to be no overlap, I was going to end one job and start another, whether or not that would somehow trigger a pre-existing condition clause and make us be ineligible for the coverage under my new employer. Other than that, I really haven't thought about it. I'm excited, not excited, or otherwise. I'd have to say I'm fairly neutral on the subject of healthcare.
Okay, so can I ask you what gets you excited about health?
Well, the health, I love. This, for me, health kind of falls into, it's one of the main categories of personal development. So you have your career, your relationships, your money, health, really. I mean, those are kind of the big buckets, and then you can throw spirituality in there as well as the fifth. So as far as health goes, I mean, for me, just in whatever kind of category you're working with on the personal development space, what gets me excited is seeing myself and my clients grow. And to take somebody who just feels stuck and like they don't know how to change, either they're frozen with analysis by paralysis, or they have a history of starting a bunch of projects and never finishing them, and to be able to show them a process and a system of figuring out the direction they want to go and how to make it easy and fun and not this big, long, tedious bore that that they typically think it needs to be, and because that's what their experience has been in the past.
So for you, health is more of a healthy life.
That's fair, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So I kind of skipped over. So what gets you excited about healthy life?
A healthy life? Well, I mean, it's the more healthy you are, the more energy you have, and the more rich of a life that you can live. That's something that I found to be true in my own life. I can look back at kind of at a turning point in my life when I was, I guess it was probably 2011. I'd left a job that I loved for a job that I wasn't thrilled about, but it was going to double my income. So I dove in, and soon I explicitly asked in the interview a question. I had asked, what's the work-life balance here? Because, I have this newborn son on the way, and I'm interested in family is important, and I want to be able to make sure that I'm going to have time to be with my family. And they said, well, most people get out of here, it's pretty much a 9-to-5 kind of a job. And I took that, and I said, oh, sounds great to me. That sounds pretty fair. And then I got there and found out that I was not included in most people, and my department was an 8 to 10 kind of a job, and I pretty much missed the first 2 years of my son's life. And as a result, I started becoming more and more stressed. My health started suffering. I started getting all these weird ailments and becoming more tired and groggy, and my body started just doing weird stuff. And it got to a point, my relationship started to suffer with my wife because I didn't have the energy, because, I'm working all the time, I'm grumpy all the time, I'm tired, I don't see my family. And then on top of it all, I start having my body starts seizing up in different places. As I would subsequently learn, I had developed diabetes. And so, and so I didn't know it. I just knew I was thirsty all the damn time. And so I would go home and I would drink a gallon of orange juice every day. I'm just so thirsty. And I just craved orange juice because my body wasn't getting any energy. And so it's I just kept eating and drinking more and more. And I was just more and more grumpy, more tired. And finally, when I had the diagnosis, the doctor's like, yeah, this is what you have. And you need to go on medication immediately. And your body, your nervous system is shutting down. And I guess I'd come pretty close to a coma once upon a time when I didn't know what I had, but I had gone to the movies. It was the only day I ever left it before 5 o'clock. I just took a break, and I was like, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go see, what was the movie with a whole bunch of kids killing each other? What is that? Catching Fire? One of those? Not that one.
Oh yeah, that one of the Hunger Games movies.
Hunger Games. Yeah, so it was like Hunger Games. So like, I knew my wife wouldn't want to go see that movie, but it was getting good reviews, and I wanted to go see it. So I went to go see the Hunger Games. I left. It was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and here I'm thinking I'm going to get to go see the movie, come home. I'll get to surprise my wife nice and early. You know, I'll get home probably 5, 6 o'clock, and it'll just be wonderful. And so I go to the movie. I get like this jumbo slushy, right? The jumbo, like the huge, I don't know how many ounces it was, a gigantic slushy, gigantic bowl of popcorn. And the great thing about those jumbo ones is that they come with free refills. And so I went through 2 of them each. And this was in the midst of everything was going on with my body, and I always season up and all that stuff. I didn't know what was going on. So I walk out of the movie, I felt like shit. And so I get in my car and start driving home. And sure enough, it was like 4:30, whatever. And then I just feel like I can't drive anymore. I had to pull over into a parking lot at Walmart, and I just passed out. And I wake up, and it's like 9:30 at night. And I'm like, what the hell happened? Here I am. So it's no calls from my wife because, I mean, it's like a normal time, right? So I'm usually leaving work around that time. So I go home, and I'm all guilty about having not eaten the popcorn and pretty much racked my body with all this unhealthy food. And my wife's a big health nut, so I certainly didn't mention it to her. And so... And it was like a week or 2 later when we discovered that I had diabetes, and that my average glucose was like 400 or 500. I mean, it was crazy. And so I can only imagine what it was that day. And so the doctor comes to me. He's like, yeah, so you have to start going on all this stuff immediately. And more started researching the diagnosis and diabetes. And like, well, it seems like it's not actually a problem. Isn't with that I don't have enough insulin, is that my body isn't using the insulin that it has. So how pumping myself more full of insulin is going to solve the root cause of the problem? And so I said, I don't want to do that. And he refused to let me leave the office. I mean, he was like blocking the door and was quite adamant. I mean, he's doing
Holy
his
cow.
due diligence. He really wanted me to get on insulin immediately. I think he really was concerned for my health. And I just like, well, I just found out about this, right? So at least let me try to handle it on my own. And so I just started. Around that time, I had found it was some research that was done, I think, over in the UK about this starvation diet. I don't know how familiar you are with it.
Yeah,
you know anything about that?
Ketogenic diet?
It's pretty much was an 8-week-long fast where you have 600 calories a day. So, and then what had happened is people who had gone on this diet were, in 60% of the cases, they pretty much cured their diabetes. I mean, like, there's no traces. It just, their blood sugar levels came back down. The problem with the study was these are all overweight individuals, and here I am, my ideal body weight. I'm like, well, so I'm starting at like 160 and 6 feet tall. So here I am. So I'm like, man, well, this is going to be interesting. So I'm going to at least give this a try. I didn't tell my doctor because I didn't want him to piss all over it. And so my wife was fully supportive and just started exercising more, just started eating right, and then just kind of cut out all the garbage, right? And I just started wasting away. And so I had to tell people at work because I didn't want them to think I was on crack or something. So I'm like, hey, hey guys, here's the thing. I'm working. This is what's going on, and this is how I'm trying to handle it. I'm probably going to be a little out of it because I'm going to be starving. So just bear with me these next couple of months. And sure enough, within a week, my numbers crashed back down into the normal range. And sure enough, I held it there for the full 8 weeks and came through. And I started coming up out of that slowly. And started realizing through that process, this is kind of what kickstarted my whole current track that my life has taken. This is all born out of this entire endeavor. Because as part of this, I started getting in the habit of tracking my numbers daily, right? Tracking my glucose, tracking what I was eating, tracking my exercise, and I just created a simple spreadsheet where I track all this stuff, and kind of got to see the cause and effect relationships between, hey, when I do X, Y happens, and it started to help me guide my behavior. Just the act of tracking alone helped me guide my behavior in a way that was more beneficial to myself. And over time, I started adding more and more behaviors to the spreadsheet. And so I started tracking my water, my sleep, and I started adding non-health related behaviors, like how many pages I was reading, how much I was writing, how many networking contacts I had made. I mean, and the spreadsheet's kind of grown into this massive behemoth, but anything that I wanted to track in my life, I would put on the spreadsheet, and invariably I would start to see the metric improve, really without me doing anything in additional. So it's like that showed to me the power of just awareness, and shining the light of awareness on a particular subject has power in and of its own right to help improve a metric. Because I take myself as an example. I was completely ignorant of what I was doing to my body. I wasn't trying to wreck it intentionally. I mean,
really? Are you sure about that?
Maybe with the popcorn. That was a little rebellion day. I mean, I just knew that you're just responding to stimulus in the environment, right? But kind of doing it mindlessly. I wasn't taking a mindful approach. And once you start the path of tracking, it kind of makes you confront whatever it is you're doing, either positively or negatively. And for a lot of those metrics, I was able to make progress alone, through observation alone. And then for others, so I struggled with certain kinds of behaviors. And so I was just doing a lot of research on personal development and habit formation. And that's where I came across BJ Fogg's work on tiny habits, and became a certified instructor after having gone through the program myself and seeing the impact of, wow, this really can be simple. I mean, if you just make super tiny changes, they can really build into something powerful, and they can build their own momentum, and you don't have to kill yourself in the process. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell, kind of how I got to be on the path I'm on now and how it relates to health.
That's awesome. So thanks for sharing. It's really, I just find it amazing that all you had to do was track on the spreadsheet, and then that automatically changed your behaviors. I've tried to do that, but there were in some ways, and sometimes it totally helps. And then other times, for some tracking programs I've done, there's so many variables that it just becomes overwhelming. So I think there's like a sweet spot. What would you recommend to somebody who's getting started trying to change behavior through tracking?
Well, I don't think tracking isn't where I would start. I would try to understand what behaviors they're trying to change explicitly, and how they can break that down into something ridiculously simple. And I do mean that literally. I mean something laugh out loud, oh my God, I can't believe you're only trying to do that. So if somebody were trying to lose weight, say they wanted to go run a marathon or run a 5K, right? So say they're going from couch potato status, and they have this goal of wanting to run a 5K. And there's a few reasons they've tried in the past. They've tried Weight Watchers, they've tried at the first of the year, they have these New Year's resolutions that they'll stick with for a few weeks or a few months, and then they break down. And that's kind of the typical way people go about trying to set behaviors, right? They have these surges of motivation that are caused by particular events or particular dates. And what happens is that our motivation fluctuates around a mean. And as it reverts back to baseline, that baseline is typically lower than the necessary level of motivation required to sustain that behavior, then we stop doing the behavior. I mean, it's really that simple. Mm-hmm. But understanding that, the key then is to make the path toward progress fall under our baseline level of motivation. And that was something that I learned from BJ in Tiny Habits, is he has this behavioral model that he's developed where it's you just keep making things easier until they fall underneath the baseline level of motivation, and then you never have to worry about not doing it again, because you're always going to be sufficiently motivated to do that minimum amount. And,
and then your baseline changes.
No, that's the thing. That's where most habit change processes that I've seen espoused by coaches and other people. What happens is, as you say, I want to do push-ups. So I can actually take myself as an example with this, because when I was first learning the Tiny Habits process, I didn't believe it. So I'm a fairly upper body weakling, so I was probably able to do maybe 10, 15 push-ups tops, right? And so the Tiny Habits approach would say, hey, every day after I brush my teeth, I'm going to do 2 push-ups. And I'm like, well, I can do at least 15. I'll set my baseline, my tiny amount, equal to 8. I'm like, well, it's halfway through. I can at least do 8, right? So I start off, I'm motivated. I do my 8 a day, knock it out. And then one day I don't know, I was up late one night or something, and I just didn't, I was grumpy. I just really didn't feel like it. And all of a sudden, 8, which had felt tiny every other day, felt big that day, because it just felt big, and I didn't do it. I skipped it. And then once I skipped it, I was like, screw it. The next day I skipped it again, and I skipped it again. And before I knew it, months had passed, and I hadn't done a single push-up. And I think what happens is it's a bias that we have is we think we can do more than we actually can. We think that how we feel now is how we're always going to feel. And that's not the case. And so trying to bring some awareness to that fact that, hey, we need to plan for when we're going to be at our worst. Not how we're feeling right now, not how we're going to be tomorrow or how we are when we're at our best. And create a baseline that's targeted towards our worst moments. And once you have that baseline set and we keep in Tiny Habits world, it's meant to be something you can do within a few seconds. Something that it's just to get that initial momentum building. So do 1 push-up, do 2 push-ups, and that's it. That's it. So if tomorrow I was sick off my rocker and I could hardly move, I could probably do 2 habits and keep the streak alive. And sure enough, when I subsequently, months later, I did the program again, and this time I trusted it, and I kept my tiny habit equal to 2 push-ups, and I haven't missed a day since. And so all of a sudden, I can do 2 push-ups most days. I usually do way more than that. But it's like a mental relief to know that I only have to do 2 if I only want to. And that's the secret. That's it in a nutshell. So combine that with tracking, and you have a pretty powerful program.
So that's fascinating. I'm trying to imagine like what the tiniest thing would be for bike riding. So I want to ride my bike every morning. I live in a place where it's pretty dangerous to do that, so it's already kind of a big hurdle just to ride your bike in the dark in a city where people get hit by bikes a lot. So,
do you find yourself staying in bed more? I mean, so you just wake up and hit the alarm? I mean, how far have you gotten along the path of riding your bike?
In the morning, not at all. I always go in the evening, usually with a group of people. So my actual goal, I suppose, is just to exercise in the morning. And, so what I do instead is a lot of times I'll take my dog for a walk, and that's fine. But it's not exercise. It doesn't count if it's just a half an hour walk around the neighborhood.
That's fair. It does count. It's better than nothing. But as far as the tiniest thing you could do, I mean, I presume you wear different clothes, right, when you're biking versus when you're walking the dog?
Yes.
Okay, so the tiniest thing you could do is whenever after I wake up, I'm going to put my biking clothes on.
Oh.
And that's it. And that's it. And then you can go walk the dog if you want to. But you're going to feel sillier walking the dog in biking clothes, and you're probably going to be that much more likely to actually get on the bike once you have the clothes on. And so that's a step. The hack is to take the first tiniest step that you can from the current path that you're on, which is walking the dog, to interrupt that and to set yourself the opportunity to bike. And it seems like the earliest junction point, I would imagine, would be the clothes you'd wear. So put your biking clothes on and see how many more times you bike the next week versus walk the dog. It's probably going to be more. You might not bike every day, but you'll probably bike more than you had been. And then over time, you might find yourself biking even more and more and more until it's a fully established habit.
So the person gets the benefit because they feel like they've accomplished something since they kept their promise to their self of fulfilling the tiny goal. And then the additional benefit of actually doing something more than they would have done otherwise.
That's right. You get to feel this, we call it success momentum. So it's setting yourself up for success. And once you feel that, I mean, even if you just put your biking clothes on and crawled back in the bed, you still get to take credit for having achieved your goal for that day of putting your clothes on. And you still would have done so knowing that had I not, I was that much more likely to have biked today versus yesterday because I put my clothes on. And over time, if you do that, even if you could put your clothes on, crawl back in bed, 6 out of 7 days, but eventually you're gonna find that behavior that'll inch you close enough to cross you over the threshold. And I've never really seen it be the case. I mean, that's kind of the approach I take for a lot of exercising. A lot of people want to go running or walking or something, biking a little less often, but I mean, the same principle would apply. So it's like just put your running shoes on. And once you put your running shoes on, everybody will report running more. And so I've never had the case where somebody consistently does the behavior and finds themselves doing less than or the same amount of old behavior that they used to.
That's fascinating. So if someone is trying to stick to a regimen, like for example, you're such a good example. You have the doctor tell you need to do one thing, and there's something inside of you. I would love to know what it is that made you decide immediately that I'm not going to take his advice and I'm going to research it on my own. And you did the research and you decided you were going to do something else that's not particularly easy. Eating 600 calories a day is not easy, and it is. I mean, I'm sure that you were living off of your own fat, which you really were technically, I'm sure, on a ketogenic diet at that point. So, and that's known to help diabetes quite a bit. So you were doing awesome. But that took a lot of willpower. Like, what would be the tiny step for someone that's trying to defy their doctor and take a different path? That's hard.
Well, that most definitely was not a tiny habit. I mean, that was before I knew anything about tiny habits. Is when I did this, and that was more or less a realignment of my motivation. And so that was a permanent realignment of my motive. Like, you start reading about all the bad things that can happen when you have uncontrolled diabetes, and like you lose your limbs, your eyesight goes. I'm like, okay, that's one side of the equation, and like I don't want that. And on the other hand, I could start taking massive amounts of insulin, and your body over time becomes more addicted to it. You need more and more, and it becomes less and less effective because you're not treating the root cause. And like, well, that seems like I don't want that either, because why would I? It's like the options didn't make any sense to me. So maybe it was just my own ignorance. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I did not understand how taking insulin was solving the root cause of the problem, which was my body not using the insulin it already had. And so is like having a whole bunch of locked doors inside my body and just throwing more keys into the body, hoping that the doors magically unlock, instead of using the keys that are already there to unlock my muscles and have my muscles use the energy that was already there. So it's like, well, to me, it made logical sense to why the starvation diet would work. It's like, well, it's pretty much like a spoiled child. No, you can't have dessert. You don't want to eat? Okay, you don't have to eat. You just wait. But you're not going to get dessert unless you eat your dinner. So it's like eventually you get hungry enough and you start eating. And so it's like eventually it's like my body got spoiled thinking, well, it's eventually going to start getting some more food. Like, no, you're not. You'd better start using what you have, or else you're never getting any food ever again. So it had no choice. And then that kind of, I guess, gave it a rebaseline. And that's worked. I mean, that I was able to get down to a completely non-diabetic range. I went to the doctor a year later. My A1C was in the healthy range, and he was blown away. But the weird thing was, he didn't even ask me how I did it. Just kind of, he didn't even ask me. And I would just, so, I mean, it made me just so skeptical of the whole industry. It's like, I do this thing, you say that it's impossible, you're not even curious. And so, I mean, I like my doctor too. I mean, I think he's a great doctor, but that was weird. That's just weird. I mean, there's people like me out there that have done this. I mean, that have gone from a grossly very, very bad state to a healthy state. And if you do some research, you can find that there's examples out there. And so if anybody can do it, then why not you, right? So I don't know.
What was going through your head when you were when the doctor told you what to do, and he's standing in front of the door, not letting you leave? He's so worried about you, and you're just like, I reject everything you're saying, and I'm going to do it on my own.
I didn't preclude. I said you could be right, but I'm not going to give in without at least trying. That's kind of my approach with anything, right? I mean, with any kind of behavior change, give it an old college try and see what you can do. And so when people are trying to make behavioral changes, there's very few people come up with a recipe. We call them recipes. Like, after I wake up, I'm going to put my biking clothes on. That would be an example of a tiny habits recipe. It may work, it may not. If it doesn't work, well, then you try a different one, and you try a different one, and you keep trying different ones until you find one that works. And so it seems like I wasn't ruling out that maybe I am a lost cause and I just need to go on insulin, but it's like I know what that path looks like, because I was able to find research on what that path looks like. That looks like my body becoming addicted to insulin, eventually not making its own, and eventually all these bad things happen. It's just much more delayed. Okay, I can eat what I want in the interim, but I still know what the end state looks like. Like, or I can see if I can try to address the root cause and try to fix it that way. And so that's what was going through my mind is I don't want to go down a path that I know to be detrimental if I can at least try some other alternatives first. So
it must be like that with everything you do. That's really unique. I mean, most people don't immediately jump to that. Most people have an illness, they do what the doctor says, then it doesn't work, or their health suffers, and then eventually they come around, or they never get any answers, and eventually they come around to, I'm going to do it myself. Fewer people get to do it myself. So there's the people who never get to do it themselves and they suffer, and then there's the few people just start out with, I'm going to do it myself. So
yeah, that's where I think that having a curious mindset comes into play, and that's the methodology that I teach in coaching. It's Q-bar. It's questions times behavior times accountability equals results. And you're really getting at the very first step is ask better questions, get better results. And so many people go through life not asking questions, or they'll say, well, something will happen. How many times have you heard somebody just say, I don't know, as if that's an actually legitimate reason to something? I mean, we live in the internet age where you're 10 seconds of a Google search away from any bit of knowledge. And yet people still revert to, I don't know, as an answer, as a legitimate answer, any question that might be asked of them. So I think helping people to see that, well, you might not know. There's lots of stuff I don't know, and it's okay to not know. And you have the power to know anything you want to know and to learn more about it within probably like 30 seconds of work. So that's a mindset thing, that issue that usually the people that are coming to me, they're usually beyond the point where they're using I don't know as a reason. I don't typically see that with my clients. I can see how that would be a problem for people that aren't quite there yet. I mean, that's a little mini breakthrough. You kind of have to get to the point where you feel empowered enough to make changes in your life, or at least open enough to explore the possibility of different alternatives. Yeah, I haven't yet tried to work with somebody who's below that stage yet to try to get them to that stage. I'm usually working with people who are already at the stage of taking some sort of self-ownership and trying to maximize it.
God, you just clarified something for me like crazy. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
What's that?
Well, I keep trying to figure out who my customer is because I have this goal. I mean, really, I used to do political activism. I'm just like really passionate about healthcare freedom. So any law, anything that governs or restricts access to healthcare, delivery of healthcare, anything about it just ticks me off, and it's exactly what screws up our system and creates really perverse incentives for everyone involved. And so I keep trying to figure out, well, is my message to like spread this idea of nobody ought to control anything that has to do with your body, but that's like a political message, or am I trying to help people get to the point, that baseline that you're talking about, is just to get to the point where they realize, oh yeah, there's other options other than my general doctor down the street that doesn't give me any answers or whatever. But really what I'm realizing just recently is those aren't my people. My people are people like me, people like my friends who already, like you said, are at a different level, who are already like, I'm trying to find the answers. Here are the answers that you've been looking for. And if I craft my message for those people and I serve those people, I'm going to have a lot more fun, and it's going to work a lot better. And there's enough people like that out there.
Well, those people will find you naturally, and so if that's the message you're sending out there, those are the people that are going to be attracted to your message, and so they'll kind of self-select, essentially. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Right, but it's just like having that perfect customer avatar, that's the person that you're talking to when you write your copy. That's the person you're talking to, and I'm just honing that, and you just helped me hone that a little bit more. So I appreciate it.
Sure.
Now, you've allowed me to interview you for a while and ask you questions, and I loved your answers. And do you want to practice on me for a little while?
I've actually got to go, Amanda, but my wife is calling me as we speak, so I'd better head home. I need to head home before bedtime, so that's kind of going to be my goal here. So no, not this time, but thank you. So you asked some really good questions. I think that it went really well, and I'm going to actually stop the broadcast now, unless there's anything you want to wrap up with.
No.